ladies and gentlemen. We don't have Bob Parker or Paul Holmes, so I've got to do this is my life rather than this is your life. Just to give you a little bit of background, I've had 3 careers in business. I'd like to talk a little bit about baby boomers and succession planning, and you can see the little photograph on the left-hand side. I'll spend a couple of moments talking about motorcycling, and while we're at it, anybody who's a motorcyclist, would you mind standing up, please? Chris Parkins, yes, we'll talk about him later. The 2-minute CV, born and bred here in Wellington, and other than a couple of years in London, flatting with a lady over there in red for some of the time, lived here all my life. I went to Victoria University and did a BCA, and then had 3 careers, or have 3 careers. Seem to have spent a lot of time buying and selling and forming and financing businesses, and talk about that shortly. And currently I'm on various boards, and another wee thing down the bottom is I run motorbike tours for those who are interested, and I'll have a few photographs of that shortly. In the 1980s, the IT business was rather fascinating, and to give you perspective, I was involved in the sale with our company of the first 1 gigabyte disk drive in New Zealand, which we sold to the State Services Commission. And the interesting thing about that is it took a room that was this size to house it. It needed air conditioning and a false floor. The cost was $1 million. To put that into perspective, 16 gigabytes, not very big, no air conditioning needed, $16. So the industry has changed somewhat. And when I first formed my own business in 1982, you could buy a system for $20,000, $1982, to run your business software on. Well, today, that would cost you $1,000, and with software like Xero, $600 a year. So times have changed. From there, I went into corporate training as a result of having sold the PC business and being under restraint of trade, and that's probably the least interesting of the 3 careers, but I ended up having to sell my company and buy it back and sell it and buy it back, and finally sold it around about 10 years ago. Not a great deal of fun, but a different story. From then, I moved to deciding that it was a lot easier to run a business with 2 cats than to have 25 staff, with all the demands of what they want and what they need, and how much accrued sick leave do I have, and on it goes. So what I've been involved in is helping businesses take the next step. And just a couple of examples, I had a client ring me and say, look, I want to buy this business. It's going to cost $1.5 million. I haven't got any money. How do we do it? And I guess 3 years ago he did that. We organised the financing, and now he's just about got it all paid off. So that was good fun. At the other end of the scale, I have a client, young fellow in his early 30s, who tossed and turned. He said, oh, I just don't know whether to take on my first staff member as a contractor. And so we helped him through it, and now he's got 6 staff members and taking home more money than most of us. So what I describe myself as doing is helping people get off the bus and look at the bus going past, whereas they're normally just driving it. So it's good fun. Just like to talk a moment about baby boomers and businesses. And it's interesting that of the 469,000 businesses in New Zealand, there are not too many that have lots and lots of employees. But that target area of 141,000 have 1 to 49 employees. And the question is, how many are owned by baby boomers and where they're going to go next? So it's interesting that many are starting to think about retiring, selling out their business, or perhaps recovering from illnesses. And they understand what they do, but they can't see the wood for the trees as to how to escape from that business. So I've been involved in the last few years helping businesses take the next step in that area and put together their sales options. In succession planning, it's not just if you own your own business, but if you're in a job, the question is who's going to succeed you, how are you going to get through that? And I'm just going to go through these very quickly. You think about what your objectives are, what the time frame is, and how much involvement you want to have into the future. Remarkably, when it comes to preparing your sale, it's amazing the number of people who just haven't got it organised. And in their business, you find they've got cars, they've got boats, they've got art, all sorts of things that are all lumped into the business for tax purposes. And you then have to help them strip all that out and make the business properly viable in its own right. How do you go about the selling process? Well, you have to prepare various things and work through what is a fairly simple process. If anybody wants to know anything about that, I'm very happy to chat. Some other things that I do: I'm on the governing body of Arthritis New Zealand, not that I have any arthritis. I'm a trustee of the Mary Potter Hospice Foundation. I work with business mentors, and I was a charter member of Harbour City Rotary for 10 years, and then took a 10-year break. Interestingly, motorcycled through India, Turkey, Bolivia, Peru, Chile, Vietnam, Thailand, just to name a few. So we'll talk about a few highlights of that. The one and only time I've ever shared a double beer with a bloke. He's not here to tell the tale. Interesting watching Wayne take a nap while we were under Pakistani artillery fire in the Kashmir line of control. Fascinating riding across the Salar, it's the salt lake in Bolivia, and if you can imagine starting at Turangi and riding across Lake Taupo on salt, that's what it was like. Riding the Ho Chi Minh Trail, that's rather different and fascinating. And I take motorbike tours through Thailand and Burma and the Golden Triangle, and that's interesting as well. Just got a couple of photographs. Apologise for the graininess, but you can see just above the bike is a white cloud. That's an explosion of the Pakistanis shelling us just before we started going down the line of control. And a few people in the group, you probably wouldn't recognise them from behind, but there's Wayne Morgan and Rex Nichols, Kerry's gone, and Chris Parkin there just before we headed down 120 k's of being shelled. That's a pretty typical scene of traffic in Saigon. You think, how is this ever going to work? Well, it does. I happened to be in the front seat of a taxi, and the traffic was just going everywhere, but it did seem to work and no one crashed into us. I thought it might happen though. That's a little bit of motorcycling in Thailand. We don't usually have 3 on a bike in terms of our groups, but the locals, 3 is a reasonably small number for riding on a motorbike. And finally, just one of the groups in the background is the Mekong River. Beautiful place near the Golden Triangle in Thailand, and lots of people have enjoyed that. So that's pretty much what I do. I have a little saying that you've got to keep doing lots of different things. Retirement is an option. My wife has a good expression, I married him for better or for worse, but not for lunch. There you go. Thank you.